Hurricane Ernesto strengthens after pummeling the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico, leaving half the storm-battered American territory without power.
Life-threatening flash flooding and significant heavy rainfall across these islands.
Tonight, more than 120,000 people are without drinking water.
The number one concern is the wind damage, flooding, and any impact to the electric infrastructure.
What the new track of the storm tells us about dangerous conditions expected in Bermuda and along the East Coast. The CBS Evening News starts now. Good evening, everyone. I'm Major Garrett in for Nora. Hurricane Ernesto is on track to become a Category 3 storm within the next 48 hours. Ernesto is growing stronger as it churns through the Atlantic and takes aim at Bermuda this weekend. The storm battered Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands with torrential rains and strong winds, causing heavy flooding, road closures, and downed trees. Hundreds of thousands of homes and businesses are now without power. The effects of this storm will be felt along the East Coast beginning tomorrow, with large waves and, importantly, life-threatening rip currents. We have team coverage tonight, and CBS's Manuel Bojorquez starts us off from Puerto Rico.
Tropical storm Ernesto blew past Puerto Rico today, leaving rivers on the island swollen after nearly 10 inches of rain, and roughly half of all power customers in the dark. You can see the problem here behind me. This power pole came down during the storm. The lines are now strewn about, and while authorities have blocked off access to the road, we're not yet seeing power crews. At least 20 hospitals were operating on generators while all schools were closed. This car was swept away. While in Manatí, emergency workers rescued 3 people, including this elderly couple trapped by floodwaters, using ropes and a stretcher to carry them up a steep hill to safety. Officials were forced to open floodgates at a dam along the La Plata River. Sirens warned residents in nearby Toa Baja to evacuate their homes in case of flooding. Some came to shelters like this one, where we met Yesenia Adorno. She fled with her dogs after water started to rise behind her home. How has this been? La tormenta.
Miedo.
Fear.
Miedo. Lloramos.
You cried. Puerto Rico's power grid was wiped out by Hurricane Maria in 2017, which slammed the island as a strong Category 4 storm. It took nearly a year to restore power to all residents. Today, the island's electric company faced a major test.
The government today is much better prepared. We have a plan that you can go into our website and take a look at the plan.
There are road closures across the island tonight due to flooding or fallen trees and power poles. In this neighborhood, we noticed that power crews have now arrived. But as the rain continues to fall and as we prepare to enter a dark night, the question everyone has is when will the power be restored? Major?
Very good to have you on the scene for us. Manuel Bojorquez, thank you. CBS's Lonnie Quinn is tracking Ernesto and has the latest projections. Lonnie, good evening.
Well, good evening to you, Major. This is a storm that's put a lot of rain down in the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is still catching some of the outer bands, but the center of the storm has now moved north of Puerto Rico. If you take a look at the satellite imagery, you're going to see it's a pretty healthy storm, and it's forecast to get stronger as we move along. In terms of where it stands right now, the most recent update we have from the National Hurricane Center says it's a Category 1, just barely. All right, 75-mile-per-hour winds. Cat 1s begin at 74, so it's a very low-grade Cat 1. But it gets stronger as this moves along, and possibly even a major hurricane by Friday as it approaches Bermuda. That's next for this storm. Is it a 2? Is it a 3? Most likely a Cat 2 around Bermuda. That means 100-mile-per-hour winds. It means some very big waves, storm surge as well. Look how close that skinny red line comes to Bermuda. Is it a landfall? Is it not? It's going to be very close, but all along the eastern seaboard, I'm talking anywhere from the Outer Banks all the way up to the Hamptons, we're talking big waves from 8 to 10 footers onshore. These could be big swells offshore, 30-foot ones perhaps well into the ocean, but that is the very latest. Major, it's all yours.
Lonnie Quinn, thank you so much. There is good news on the economy tonight, with inflation falling to its lowest level in more than 3 years. This makes it more likely that the Federal Reserve will cut interest rates next month, but as senior business and technology correspondent Jolene Kent reports, Americans are still frustrated with higher prices on some everyday items.
Mom of 4, Shauna McDonald, says her annual back-to-school shopping trip cost more this year.
Tape, staples.
She's been bargain hunting, looking for the best deals for her second grader, Willow.
How does it feel spending this year versus last year? I never used to think about it, but now it's, yeah, you got to think about it. Everything is so expensive.
This reality comes as new inflation data show consumer prices rose 2.9% in July over the last year, dropping below 3% for the first time since 2021. It was better than what economists expected, driven by lower prices for gas and used cars. But monthly expenses like rent, auto insurance, and electricity remain stubbornly high compared to last year, stretching budgets even thinner. The Biden administration acknowledging the pain.
You know, I have 3 words for people who feel the way you just said, which is we hear you.
Does this inflation report increase the chances of a bigger rate cut from the Federal Reserve?
You know, we've seen inflation come down and we've seen more worrying reports on the employment side. I would guess that a slightly bigger cut is more on the cards today than it was yesterday.
McDonald, who also owns this crystal shop in Burbank, says that even though inflation has cooled off, her bottom line hasn't warmed up.
That tells me one thing. It's like it's not quite better yet. So I think we still have a ways to go.
Looking ahead, this inflation report, coupled with the cooling labor market, have set the stage for the Federal Reserve to answer a critical question next month: whether to cut the benchmark interest rate by 1/4 point or 1/2 point. It's currently at 5.3%. Major?
A critical question indeed. Jolene Kent, thanks so much. The economy is, of course, one of the top issues, and both campaigns are talking dollars and cents this week in battleground North Carolina. Former President Trump returned to the stump this afternoon in Asheville, and CBS's Caitlin Huey-Burns was there.
With polls tightening, Donald Trump is trying to capitalize on what he considers one of his strengths, the economy.
You never had it so good. Now you're not doing so well, I hated it. We had the strongest economy in history.
In an effort to tie his new opponent, Kamala Harris, to current economic conditions, his campaign coined a new term, Kamalanomics.
If Harris wins this election, the result will be a Kamala economic crash.
In a speech in battleground North Carolina, the former president focused on his proposals to eliminate federal taxes on Social Security and on tips, a plan he says Harris is copying.
And we will do something else which was copied, viciously, ruthlessly copied. No tax on tips, okay? You know, if they wanted to do that, why didn't they do it 3.5 years ago?
Last week, Harris endorsed the idea, along with an increase to the minimum wage. Polling shows the race has changed significantly since Harris replaced Biden as the Democratic nominee. But Trump's advantage on the economy remains. CBS News polling shows more voters feel they will be better off financially if Trump wins.
On day one, I will take on price gouging and bring down costs.
Harris will also travel to North Carolina on Friday to unveil her own economic plans ahead of the Democratic National Convention next week. And some of her supporters here are eager for a fresh start.
I am hoping she sets her own agenda. I think we need a new, clean, crisp agenda. It's got to be more than just being against somebody else.
And speaking of the economy, tomorrow, Harris and President Biden will make their first joint appearance since he dropped out of the race for an event on lowering costs. And for former President Trump, he's expected to head to Bedminster, New Jersey tomorrow for a press conference. Major?
Caitlin Huey-Burns, thank you so much. We're learning quite a bit more tonight about a wave of attempted cyber attacks by Iranian state hackers targeting email accounts linked to the campaigns of former President Trump and Vice President Harris. CBS's Nicole Skanga joins us with the details. Nicole.
Major, Iran has launched a sweeping months-long cyber attack targeting both U.S. presidential campaigns, according to a new report out by Google. Researchers for the tech giant revealing today that Iranian hackers, known as APT-42, used malicious links to target the personal email accounts of roughly a dozen people back in May and June, including members of the Biden-Harris administration. Google calls these phishing attacks wide-ranging and ongoing. The revelations come on the heels of another security report, this one from Microsoft, last week, indicating that a high-ranking campaign official was the target of a similar Iranian-backed attack. The FBI confirmed Monday that it has launched an investigation. Major.
Part of a new normal in cyberspace. Nicole, thank you so very much. President Biden has surged diplomats and military assets to the Middle East to try to head off tensions between Israel, Iran, and its proxies. Meanwhile, CIA Director Bill Burns is en route to the region for negotiations over a ceasefire and hostage deal in Gaza. CBS's Remy Inocencio reports tonight from Tel Aviv.
A father for just 4 days, Mohammed Abu Kamasan lost his wife and their twin 4-day-old babies, Asser, a boy, and Asil, a girl, in an Israeli strike on central Gaza. Just days before Hamas said it would not join ceasefire talks, blaming Israel as the block to a truce, and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu for wanting to prolong the war in Gaza and to expand it in the Middle East. A truce too late for so many. I was away to get their birth certificates, he said. I didn't even have time to celebrate them. Now he must bury them. His family, among the nearly 40,000 Gazans killed since October 7th, says the Hamas-run health ministry.
We need to focus on a deal.
In Israel, Alon Gat is angry. He wants a ceasefire now.
And everyone says that, except Benjamin Netanyahu.
Alon's big sister, Carmel, is still a hostage in Gaza, more than 10 months after Hamas and other militants broke into their home in Kibbutz Be'eri.
Breaking the glass door, moving in, taking your family, members of your family, taking yourself, tying your hands, always pointing a Kalashnikov gun into your face, shouting at you.
If there is no ceasefire deal, what happens?
I don't want to think about it. I think that if this will fall, I won't see my sister again alive.
And the losses of Mohammed in Gaza and Alon in Israel are the horrifying stories on both sides of this war. Hopefully these broken families remind us why that ceasefire is so important and that days matter because human lives hang in the balance. Major.
Remy Inocencio, thank you. The World Health Organization is once again declaring an outbreak of Mpox a global health emergency. An overwhelming majority of cases in Africa, more than 14,000, are in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And scientists say a new strain of the disease may be more contagious than previous ones. U.S. health officials say the risk to the public is very low. The trial begins in a murder case that shook Las Vegas. Did a former elected official kill a journalist who wrote unflattering stories? That is next. A murder trial is underway in Las Vegas for a former county official accused of killing an investigative reporter outside his home. As CBS's Elise Preston reports, prosecutors revealed the alleged motive for the killing in their opening statement today.
For more than 4 decades, Jeff Gehrman reported on public officials like Robert Tellis. It's believed his mission led to his murder.
All right,
in 2022, Gehrman published a series of articles for the Las Vegas Review-Journal, alleging Tellis fostered a hostile work environment while serving as an elected public administrator.
I've done my best to try to make everyone happy, but
shortly after, he lost re-election. In court today, prosecutors showed surveillance video they say captured Tellis dressed in this neon jacket and gardener's hat before he allegedly stabbed Gehrman 7 times. That hat and sneakers were found in a search of Tellis's property. DNA evidence discovered under Gehrman's fingernails matched Tellis, according to investigators.
This case isn't about politics. It's just about murder.
Defense attorneys painted Tellis as a devoted family man and public servant who worked to weed out government corruption. The defense also argued Tellis was framed. So did he in a jailhouse interview with 48 Hours' Peter Van Sant.
That evidence, or so-called evidence, was planted, along with the other items that were allegedly found in my home as well.
Late today, emotional testimony from Gehrman's longtime neighbors who discovered his body.
I ran out there to my husband, and he was on the phone with 911, and he was in shock, and I went into shock, and he was having a hard time.
Gehrman is believed to be the only reporter killed in the U.S. in 2022 for doing his job. Before jurors were chosen, they were asked about their trust in reporters. Major?
Elise Preston, thank you so much. Eye on America is next with a look at the men and women who are ready, willing, and they say able to serve. But the military won't let them. A study from the Pentagon discovered something you might find shocking. 77% of young Americans would not qualify for military service for a variety of reasons, including mental, physical, or substance abuse issues. So, what about those who want to serve but aren't allowed to because of military policy? Natalie Morales has tonight's Eye on America.
28-year-old Hannah Vankera is everything the military desires. Motivated, physically fit, patriotic.
I believe in our country and I want to serve it.
Except for this.
My leg, I've never counted it as part of my identity. I'm just Hannah who happens to be missing a leg.
A rare birth defect forced an amputation when she was just 10 months old.
Can you walk for the camera?
And she hasn't slowed down since.
We did swim team, volleyball, rock climbing. I'll surf with it, hike with it.
And you've never felt any limitations because of your amputation?
Never.
While her amputation hasn't stopped her at all, the military has. She was rejected by the Navy.
The subject applicant does not meet established physical standards.
Active duty troops who lose limbs can still serve, but for those seeking to enlist, current absence of a foot is automatically disqualifying.
Hannah Vankera's desire to get into the military comes at a time when recruitment numbers have reached their lowest levels since the Vietnam War.
Our recruitment is suffering, and there are plenty of people with the right heart to serve that can't.
3, 2, go. Vankera is in training to once again try and enlist by seeking a medical waiver to join the Washington Air National Guard. She is also a full-time ER nurse, often on her feet for 12-hour shifts, and wants to continue doing her job while in uniform.
What better opportunity for someone who just lost a limb to see a nurse that says, hey, buck up, I'm an amputee too.
Her father, Lieutenant Colonel Joseph Vankera, is a retired Air Force flight surgeon.
You're her dad, but speaking as somebody who also knows what she needs to do her job, what do you think she adds?
She adds a joy. Her middle name is Joy. And she fits it. She perseveres.
Alex Gates is Vankera's prosthetist and says medical progress has been met by antiquated thinking.
The rule was written back when prosthetics were made out of wood and leather.
Does she have any limitations as far as you're aware of?
I think she's more able-bodied than most people that we come in contact with every day.
For the military, they would say the concern is if you're a liability, and also would you be able to deploy easily,
yes.
Right?
That is their overarching concern. I'm not asking that we ignore disability and pretend it doesn't exist, rather that we do not ignore ability.
Her goal, break through closed doors by opening minds. For Eye on America, I'm Natalie Morales in Spokane.
We reached out to the Pentagon, which responded that there has been no change in policy. A special honor for a 91-year-old nurse who was still on the job. That's next. Finally, tonight's Heart of America with a nurse who has been helping patients for more than 50 years and who has no plans whatsoever to call it quits. 91-year-old Phyllis Blackwelder has seen and treated it all. What started as a suggestion from her aunt turned into a career serving as a mentor to generations of nurses. Recently, Phyllis was honored by hospital staff in North Carolina who dedicated one of the care rooms in her name for her more than half-century of service. There have been plenty of changes over the years, including paper charts giving way to computers, but Phyllis says her love for the job has never wavered.
You feel like you have accomplished something when the day is done. You go home feeling good about your job. I've just loved it all these years.
Nurse Phyllis Blackwelder, tonight's Heart of America. And that is tonight's CBS Evening News. For Nora O'Donnell, I'm Major Garrett. Good night.